going to show you how to wire the control box. This is actually part of all shown in the wiring diagram in that little booklet you have. So there's two ways to go about it. Basically, these are just two separate ways to distribute the power in between them. You can kind of loop them, or you can kind of make this big loop over, so your preference on that. But there's little tips and tricks we have for different types of wiring. So all the gear you have here is you have your basic soldering setup, soldering gun, temperature control, your soldering. You got some wire strippers, another pair of wire strippers, but they actually have the crimping tool at the end, and then just a pair of needle nose pliers just in case. So, and then little alligator clips, and then we have our momentary switch. So this is what you'll basically be using. These are the three switches that are on the top of your control box, and then you also have your rocker switch. So we'll get a little bit to that later. So basically it's on, off, on, so it always springs back to the middle. It's better to get one that kind of flows a little more easily, because you're going to be pushing this back and forth and you can get blisters on thumb. So make sure you got that all set up. So now there's essentially two ways to do the wiring for the switches. So one way is you can solder the wires on to the switches. This is helpful because if you solder properly, you will never have to worry about, you know, wires coming undone, anything like that. There is also the risk for connection between the two and shorting out. The downside to this, though, is once they're soldered on there, it's really hard to get them off. So if you want to make any modifications later on, it's going to be a little more challenging to do that. The second one is that's shown kind of here, which you can kind of see, is you have basically your fork terminals. So we have some wire pre-cut. This is about 16 gauge stranded, so very flexible. Got your fork clips, and you can actually screw those onto the terminals on your switch. Now, this is helpful if you want to make future modifications. You can just unscrew, take off the wires. But there is a risk for if it gets jarred around, you could, you know, lose wires, lose connections. So your preference on either one. So we'll start out with the fork clip. So you got your preset wire. So what you're going to do is slide that through, and then make sure you have it flowing out so you know it's actually physically touching. Then we're going to take our crimp tool and just go right underneath and give that a squeeze. And I usually do it twice. So we'll do that for either end. And just get those nice and crimped on there. So we got one of those. You do that twice for each switch. So then now get our soldering gun ready, and we'll just kind of get these guys ready. So we'll put those in our alligator clips. Now this next step, we're soldering the stranded wire onto the fork clip. Now it's just kind of an extra precautionary step. You can just use the fork clip this way. It may not slide out, but you never know. It's always better to be safe than sorry. So clean off the solder, make sure we're all clean. Grab a little bit of our solder. Nice little on the tip, and then solder it right on there. And work it around, make sure it touches, so then get it nice and all set. And then we'll just flip it around. And for these, you kind of are keeping it on a little longer than you're supposed to. So be careful when you're touching the wire or anything, because the whole wire could be hot just from coming off that soldering gun. So a little solder on there, make sure we got that tapped. And we got one of them done. So at this point we'll take our switch and then also grab that. So what we're going to do is we're going to do cross wiring. Now the reason for that is when we go one way with the switch, we want the motors to go forward, and when we reverse the switch, we want the motors to actually reverse direction and go backwards. So that's why we'll cross these over. So basically you'll take opposite ends, unscrew those, and then place that on the one side, give that a nice little tight squeeze. Do that to the same side. And then just so you can see, I won't solder the next connection, but you got that going like this. I'll just crimp these guys real quick. And then that way you can see it all fixed and together. So. So crimp, we'll unscrew again the other two sides. Now, the two prong terminals that you will not be unscrewing for the moment right now, those are where your power wires are going to go into. So, and that's all on that diagram. You look at the diagram, it'll show you how to wire those up too. So, but these purposes will get these in. So, you can see we actually have them crossed. So, that is how you will make one of the switches. So you do this another 2 times, and then again draw this little guy right here. Nope. Basically put him into the board, take a little ring, put that on there, screw it in, and when you're done you will have something that looks like this, the 3 switches all lined up. So you got to make sure that they have enough room in between to where none of the prongs are touching each other. If they are, or if you believe there's going to be issues, you can wrap those switches in electrical tape, like right here, so you know that they're not going to be touching at all. So, and then once you get your switches in there, you get your wiring all set, just again follow the diagram, you should have your control box complete, and you can move on to the next step. So.